Media quickly dumps Trump-Russia narrative after Mueller's indictments, by Aaron Moreno for TruthFeedNews.com. It's been over a year since Mueller opened his probe into supposed Trump-Russia collusion, and not one shred of evidence to support the case has been produced. Mueller's latest indictment of 13 Russian nationals has made matters even worse by further proving the lack of collusion, and the media is now left scrambling. Many major outlets are now seriously doubting, or in some cases completely abandoning, the narrative they've been pushing for over a year. From the Daily Caller, investigators have still found no evidence Trump colluded with Russia. Politico editor-in-chief confesses skepticism of the narrative. Media slow to admit there's no evidence of collusion. 13 months into President Trump's administration, there is still no evidence whatsoever that Trump or any of his associates colluded with Russian operatives meddling in the 2016 presidential campaign. The total lack of evidence has some establishment journalists finally wondering if there wasn't any Trump-Russia collusion after all, despite Democratic conspiracy theories to the contrary. Politico magazine editor-in-chief Blake Hounshell over the weekend penned a piece confessing his skepticism of the collusion conspiracy theory. Hounshell's primary argument was that the Trump campaign was too inept to have successfully colluded with Russia without the public finding out. Political journalists on Twitter passed around Hounshell's thesis that maybe the president didn't collude with Russian hackers and online trolls as a novel idea, but the truth is, reasons for skepticism have existed in plain sight for months. The New York Times reported in May of 2017 that Russian officials discussed finding backdoor ways to influence Trump without his knowledge through retired Trump advisor Michael Flynn and former Trump campaign manager Paul Manafort. The New York Times report was inconsistent with the narrative that Trump was engaged in a quid pro quo with Russia, as many liberals have claimed without evidence. Similar reports in May that Trump's son-in-law Jared Kushner suggested opening up covert channels with Russian officials after the election also appear to work against the narrative of a Trump campaign in league with Russia. The fact that Kushner allegedly explored opening channels of communications with the Russians would imply that such channels didn't already exist. The New York Times conceded in a December story that emails showing Russia attempts to reach out to Trump aide Hope Hicks appeared to undercut the collusion narrative. In some ways, the Russian outreach to Ms. Hicks undercuts the idea that the Russian government had established deep ties to the Trump campaign before the election. The New York Times noted if it had, Russian officials might have found a better entry to the White House than unprompted emails to Ms. Hicks. FBI agent Peter Strzok, a top agent on the Trump-Russia probe, said in May of 2017 that he had yet to see any evidence of collusion between the Trump-Russia campaign. In the text, which became public last month, Strzok noted his gut sense and concern, and there's no big there. A source close to Strzok confirmed to the Daily Caller that the agent had not seen any evidence of collusion despite leading the Trump-Russia investigation for 10 months. One of the strongest perceived indicators of Trump-Russia collusion among mainstream journalists was a New York Times article in February of 2017 alleging U.S. intelligence officials had repeatedly intercepted communications between the Trump campaign and Russian intelligence officials in the year leading up to the election. But then FBI Director James Comey knocked down that story 4 months later in his testimony before the Senate Intelligence Committee. Comey characterized the story as almost entirely wrong and suggested anonymous sources are feeding journalists bad information. The other key point cited by Trump-Russia conspiracy theorists was the July 2016 Trump Tower meeting with that Kushner and Donald Trump Jr. and campaign manager Paul Manafort took with a Russian lawyer who promised damaging information on Hillary Clinton, but the meeting appears to have been a dud and nothing appears to have actually come of it. NBC News published what the network hyped as a political bombshell in September, claiming that Manafort's notes from the Trump Tower meeting contained a, quote, cryptic reference to donations in relation to the Republican National Committee, RNC. The story quickly fell apart. Yeah, and we know about the Trump Tower meeting, that Loretta Lynch had given the visa to Vesnelnitskaya, the Russian, quote, lawyer who was going to bring the dirt on Hillary. So this was a setup at the Trump Tower meeting. So that fell apart rather quickly because Loretta Lynch would have been implicated in all of this, a whole total setup. You know, and yet Mueller is continuing his witch hunt, but I think he's not going to get much help from the media now. So it might just actually fall apart since they're probably abandoning ship. Let me know what you guys think in the comments below. And again, thank you so much for watching.